Lenny Vangilder, Jude Young. It's our First NBC Bank weekend preview brought to you by First NBC Bank. 39 locations throughout Southeast Louisiana and into the Florida Panhandle. Check them out online at firstnbcbank.com. Jude, first off, to all our viewers out there, a Happy New Year and wishes for a great 2017 on the personal front, on the sports front, whatever the case may be. Our best to you and yours for a terrific new year. And the new year gets started on Sunday when the Saints head to the Georgia Dome for the final regular season game to be played in the Georgia Dome against the Dirty Birds, who get a chance to play yet another game in there as the NFC South champions either next week or the following week.
Right, I'm sure Saints fans are thrilled about that scenario. But 500 record on the line for the Saints, chance to potentially knock the Falcons out of a first-round playoff bye. So some motivation there to see a pretty good rivalry game, even though it doesn't mean a whole lot outside of pride when you're talking about 8-8 versus 7-9. But should be a competitive ball game, should be a game where the Saints try to keep the Falcons' offense off the field, rediscovering the running game as of late. Has gotten the offense back up and running, and they're going to need to attack a very speedy Falcon defense straight ahead. Mark Ingram going for 1,000 yards rushing. He should have plenty of opportunities to clear that number and then some if the Saints hope to pull off the upset.
It's been 10 years since the Saints have had a 1,000-yard rusher. Deuce McAllister in 2006 was the last to do it. Ingram can become just the seventh back in the 50-year history of the Saints franchise to rush for 1,000 yards. Drew Brees going after a milestone as well, yet another 5,000-yard season, certainly within reach. Rookie Michael Thomas can reach 1,000 yards receiving as well. Brandon Cooks has already gotten there. Only once in the history of the National Football League has a team had a 5,000-yard passer, a 1,000-yard rusher, and two 1,000-yard receivers, all of those in play. And they'll never tell you it does, but you know that means a lot to the folks on Airline Drive. So it's either going to be 8-8 or 7-9. We know that. But the way this season has finished, at least up until going into Week 17, at least gives you a little bit of encouragement heading into 2017.
Well, when you look at the grand scheme of things from a couple of seasons ago when the Saints decided to at least partially tear it down and try to rebuild the roster, you knew it was going to be a process because there wasn't money to spend, or at least big money, in free agency where all that dead cap space was being taken up. Going into next offseason, coming up, they're going to have the ability to spend some cash. They've got more draft picks, obviously, at least 6 right now, and that means they could really make a quick turnaround in an NFL where there's a lot of parity. We see it each and every year, and the Saints can look back at this past season and say, hey, 7 or 8 wins. We could be talking about a 10 or 11 easily. Self-inflicted wounds in several games hurting. They need to improve on special teams. They need to keep building up that defense. The offensive line clearly needs help as well. So there's areas where they can address, but they're on the right track. They're younger and they're more talented on defense, and there's reason to believe that next year can be a turnaround. That's why I don't believe the rumors about Sean Payton. It's good to know that he's a commodity, which means he's somebody you might want to keep around, and the same can be said of Drew Brees. He keeps on churning out the great seasons, and there's an opportunity for the Saints to bounce back and make at least one more good run at it with those two in town.
A lot of people wanting to compare what we've seen this year and last, with things kind of getting a little bit better, to 2007 and 2008 of the Saints poised to make that big jump, much like they did in the Super Bowl season of 2009. We'll see. On to college football, of course, we're deep into bowl season now. LSU in Orlando getting ready for a Saturday morning kickoff, 10 a.m. on ABC against Louisville and Heisman Trophy winner Lamar Jackson. A lot is going to be made of, what we're going to see on defense and on offense, especially going forward with LSU. But as you look at this matchup, clearly that's where it really starts in my mind, is the LSU defense trying to defend against a really classic dual-threat quarterback in Lamar Jackson.
It's a marquee matchup, and it's a shame it's so early in the morning in this time zone and starting even at 11 on the East Coast where they're playing the ball game. But this is a a situation where you look at both sides of the football and say, this is LSU's future on defense being implemented, according to defensive coordinator Dave Aranda. He's going to show more of that 3-4 defense with the injury to Kendall Beckwith at middle linebacker. That allows the opportunity for the Tigers to go with faster players and more hybrid types at the second level of the defense to start showing you what the defense is going to look like in 2017 and beyond with Aranda around. How will that match up as an unveiling against somebody as talented as Jackson and that high-paced offense? We'll see. People are excited to see how LSU does unveiling that look. And on the other side of the ball, maybe a last look at what should be considered for many fans to be the past and good riddance to it, an offense that isn't terribly creative. I'm sure there'll be wrinkles put in for the bowl game, but I don't think they necessarily have to be very creative. The usual game plan that Les Miles like to employ could help a lot here. Run the football with Darius Geis, take shots down the field in the passing game, try to control the clock and keep Jackson and company off the field. That should work very well in a matchup where the Tigers are actually favored against a Cardinals team that was pretty close to getting themselves into the college football playoff, but a big reason why they couldn't. A defense that became more and more vulnerable as the year went along. LSU exploded at the end of the season against Texas A&M. Don't be surprised if they have a big output with plenty of time to prepare this time around as well against Louisville.
You mentioned favorites and underdogs. Maybe being a favorite is not a good thing the way underdogs have performed this bowl season. Of course, the LSU-Louisville game, kind of an appetizer for the college football playoff semifinals. Alabama-Washington, followed by Clemson-Ohio State. Quick thought, who you got?
It's hard not to pick Alabama, obviously, but we'll see if Washington can keep the game low scoring and avoid mistakes. Can they implement something like the LSU game plan against Jalen Hurts, keep him in the pocket, force him to throw the ball down the field? If the freshman quarterback can make plays with his legs, Washington's in a lot of trouble. And you can flip a coin as far as Clemson and Ohio State go. I think a lot of people are counting out Clemson. They haven't played their best football in part because I think they've been waiting to get to this point again and try to get their rematch with Alabama. That matchup in the other semifinal should be a classic. I'm going to go with Clemson. I think that experience and the fact that they're being underrated here is going to help them pull this off. And Deshaun Watson is probably going to pull off the best game we've seen from him this season because we've been waiting for it from a guy who was supposed to win the Heisman. I think winning a national championship would more than make up for that. Not that I'm going to pick them against Alabama, but I wouldn't be surprised to see them get there again.
Now, of course, I agree with you on Alabama, but I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to say Ohio State. Of course, the New Year's Six bowls wrap up right here in the Mercedes-Benz Superdome Monday night. It's the Allstate Sugar Bowl. Auburn against Oklahoma. Look, Auburn probably was the second best team in the SEC. At least that's what what things would suggest to you. Although it was clearly Alabama and everyone else as things played out this year. Oklahoma ran the table in the Big 12 after a rocky start. Your thoughts on this one?
Health at quarterback really killed off any Auburn chances for greater than a 4-loss season. But as you mentioned, they probably were the second best team overall because they had an outstanding defense. Kevin Steele left LSU for Auburn, and people thought, well, that's going to end up being an upgrade for LSU and the end of Gus Malzahn. It turned out that Kevin Steele might have saved Gus Malzahn's job, and he have to have that defense up and running against an Oklahoma team that has so much firepower. Baker Mayfield's an outstanding quarterback, and Samaje Perine is good a running back as you'll see in college football that can make big plays. That's going to be the marquee matchup in that game. So obviously it's going to be decided by quarterback injuries at Auburn and what they're going to be able to do on that side of the ball to keep their defense fresh and off the field. Auburn is an underdog and they're being taken lightly. So that could be another one of those upsets like many we've seen throughout these bowl games. Oklahoma, though, playing really well the last 2 months of the season, and they'd like to finish off with another Sugar Bowl win, and they've won quite a few.
NBA Pelicans have it together, at least for the moment. A winning streak. You gotta win one before you win two, win three. Now they've got 3 in a row, coming off a win over the Clippers. Friday night, the Knicks come to town to wrap up this 5-game homestand. They'll take New Year's weekend off, but it gets tough on Monday when they head to Cleveland to face the defending champs at the Q.
You hate to say crucial at this point in the season when they're right there in range of the 8th seed in the West. There's going to be 7 teams with winning records in the West making the playoffs. And then somebody else who's probably going to have a losing mark is going to have to face the 1 seed. Warriors, Spurs, doesn't matter. But that's the goal at this point for the Pelicans. You didn't make the playoffs last year. If you can rebound from a slow start and do it again this year, that would be outstanding. You saw glimpses of what Tyreek Evans can bring to the table in a short spurt against the Clippers. He was crucial to helping you win that game with quality minutes. You've got Drew Holiday back out there. You've got, of course, Anthony Davis playing at an elite level, and everybody else starting to fill in their roles. They've got to win games like a matchup against a 500-ish team like the Knicks on a Friday night, because chances are they're not going to get the job done against the Cavs, and they're going to have tough sledding whenever they're away from home against winning teams. So if they can finish the homestand off on a strong mark, it doesn't matter what happens in Cleveland. They'll have had a good stretch and a confidence building that they can beat the teams that they're supposed to be able to compete with, the ones that they feel like when they're healthy, they're supposed to be able to beat.
Yeah, Clippers just the third team with a winning record that the Pelicans have taken down this year. College basketball also getting into conference play as well. Tulane lost their conference opener Wednesday. LSU and UNO both open up on Thursday. Much more on that next week. Jude, thanks for filling in. Again, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, sir.
And that is our First NBC Bank Weekend Preview, brought to you by First NBC Bank. 39 locations throughout Southeast Louisiana and the Florida Panhandle. Check them out online at firstnbcbank.com. He's Jude. I'm Lenny. We'll be back in 2017 right here at SportsNOLA.com.